place in our law firm somewhere between September, October of this year, and offers tend to get made somewhere between March and May of next year. So you've got a really good run in, and dare I say, a really fantastic head start above and beyond those who haven't joined. A couple of things I do want to say to you. We are running outreach programs which are called City Century Live. They are days which will be taking place in Birmingham in next month, in Leeds and Manchester in October, and I dare say we will be going again to Wales in the spring of next year. So please keep an eye out for those. We have a website, citycentury.co.uk. We also run a fairly active Instagram and TikTok pages, but most importantly, we run a very, very active LinkedIn page, part of the purpose of which is to help you access the profession, including by helping you through the sort of familiarization and recruitment processes. So we really, really encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn. We've got north of 8,500 followers, and we really want to get that number up to 10. But I will now hand over to Paul Lewis, who is our senior ambassador, and Eminence Grease for City Century, to introduce you a little bit more to today's session.
Thanks, Patrick, and hi everyone. I'm Paul Leamy. As Patrick's mentioned, I'm the ambassador and principal advisor for the City Century team. I'm also a practicing solicitor with over 25 years in city law. As Patrick said, this is episode 4 in a 10-part series, and the full schedule is set out in the email that you received containing the webinar link. It will be the same link for each episode. And the remaining episodes will be at 5 p.m. every Monday and Wednesday over the next 3 weeks. If you've got any questions during tonight's webinar session, please do pop them into the Q&A function, and we'll endeavour to get them answered. If you can't see the Q&A function on your screen at the moment, if you click on the dots next to More at the bottom of your screen, you should find it there. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Eagle Blindheim, Early Careers Manager, and Tom Davey, Solicitor Apprentice from City Century member firm Watson, Farley and Williams, who'll be guiding you through tonight's topic, which is what is city law? Over to you, Eagle and Tom.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much to everyone who's taking the time to meet with us today. Just echoing what Patrick said, the fact that you're here and you're taking the time to do this now is going to put you in such good stead when it comes to applications and figuring out what you want to do. In your previous webinar, you will have heard about the business being done in the City of London. So today we'll spend some time explaining the role of city law firms within that, and we'll try to use some relatable examples for you as well. Just before we start with introductions, a simple way to think about city law firms is that they help businesses do deals, they help businesses avoid problems, and they fix problems when they arise. So firstly, a quick introduction. So my name's Eagle, pronounced like the bird. I would normally, if I was on a bigger screen, I'd flap my hands to emphasize that. I'm the Early Careers Manager here at Watson Farley, which means that I look after recruiting and supporting our solicitor apprentices. And I've been joined by Tom today, who's one of our 2 first solicitor apprentices. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Eagle. As Eagle said, I'm Tom, and I'm one of the first year solicitor apprentices here at WFW. And I'm looking very forward to talk about city law today. So on that note, I think we should get started, Eagle.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Right, let's take a little look at first why English law drives global business. And I'm going to use Watson, Farley and Williams as an example today. So as a city law firm, WFW work with major clients, both in London and globally. What you hear from a lot
Did we lose
we lost volume?
Tom, can you? I think we've lost you.
I think Tom has. Look, you might have frozen, Tom. Oh no, no, we can still see you. But
Hello?
I think
There you are.
Apologies. Is that all right now? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can definitely hear you now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for pointing that out. So what you'll hear from a lot of law firms involved in this series is that they're international. And a key reason for this is that a lot of business deals globally are based on English law. And quite simply, this is because companies trust the English justice system. And since London is the capital of England, this means a lot of deals done in other countries will be negotiated by lawyers here in the city. Now, I previously said that the English justice system is trusted. And this is pretty much because it's both predictable and well respected. And it's so vital that these companies know what to expect when millions or even billions of pounds are involved in deals. Most large city firms will primarily work with different types of businesses, such as some of the examples we have on the slides. On the slide, companies, banks, investment funds, and private individuals. Some firms like Watson, Farley, and Williams, as it says on the slide, will also work with private individuals as well. But most work is done for organizations. And can anyone think of any reasons why that might be?
I think we'll give you some of our answers. It's mostly because
Tom, just hang
sorry.
around a second, because sometimes it just takes people a little while to access the Q&A. Paul, I don't know if you're still able to be heard, but I think what you do, for those of you who might want to add, is go to the three buttons in a circle on the bottom right, go into there, and then click onto Q&A. We already got an anonymous attendee who has said less risk. So I think you can go into there and type in your answer. More reliable. They are coming in. It just takes a little while. A question for you, Paul, if I may. Whenever I go onto it, I have a challenge entering as a new comment. I don't have to answer someone else's. Do you know how to do that?
That one.
Okay, no worries. Well, I think everyone else seems to know, so it's probably just me and my aged brain. But it sounds like the answers are coming in. I don't know whether you can see them, Agil and Tom. Maybe if I tell you. So we've got less risk, more reliable. Keris is saying higher profile work, and Lamario is also saying more reliable. Let's see if we can get a couple more reliable. Let's see if we can get a couple more responses on this. Just if we give you another minute or so. Great, Layla, thank you so much. More reliable. Reliability seems to be key. I hope that's going to be one of your answers, Agil and Tom. Let's see if we can get one more answer, and I'm really determined that we get to number 6. So if anybody else has got an answer, great. Higher volume of work / higher demand. Thank you, Lucy. This is brilliant. We're warming you up. I think that's probably enough answers for now for us to carry on. But we love the fact that you're engaging. So thank you so much.
And a lot of great answers in there as well. Yeah, the reliability, the volume is so important. Obviously, you want to work with clients that are giving you kind of repeat deals, and the value and the complexity of the deals as well have a big impact, right? Because if the complexity is there and the value of the deal is there as well, clients are often happy to pay a lot more for the advice that they can get from their lawyers. It's also proximity. So many large companies and banks have headquarters here in the city, and it means that city lawyers often work on things like corporate law, banking and finance, and international disputes. I mean, I'm sitting in our office right now, and I can look straight over on one of our clients, which is was with the big Swiss bank, who have an office here in London. Because the deals often also have an international element to them, this can have a big impact on the lawyers working for us as well, right? So city lawyers tend to become experts in their field because they're specialists in an area of law, yes, but they might also be specialists in a certain type of business in a particular sector as well. And they get to work with clients and lawyers from a lot of different backgrounds and in a lot of different jurisdictions. For example, if you want to use us as an example, there you could be working on a deal for a Japanese client or and a European company all at the same time. And because of that complexity and because of the value of the deals, city law firms and city lawyers are often well paid as well. That said, there are some really successful lawyers and law firms who work on matters for private individuals, whether that's in family law, criminal law, private investments. Those kind of matters tend to be a little bit cheaper, but they're still super important. They're essential to the way that we work as an economy. And I think Tom mentioned it. Sometimes we act for private individuals as well. I spoke to one of our junior lawyers not that long ago who worked on helping someone buy their third private jet as well. So there is that kind of work that comes into it. As a firm, Watson Farley Williams, we work within three sectors, so energy, transport, and infrastructure, which means working for companies that, for example, build wind farms, own ships, or construct buildings. However, for the purposes of today, we'll use examples that might be more familiar to you. So we'll talk about music and the right of artists throughout this webinar. Before we focus on the lawyers, on the work the lawyers might do for artists, let's take a step back and think about who they might have negotiations with or agreements with. So if you are putting yourself in the shoes of, say, a musician, who do you think you might be negotiating with, or who you might have to have lawyers deal with for you? Yeah. Copyright, sampling songs, venues as well. Very good answer from Layla. Brand deals, sponsorship, yeah, 100%. Record labels, managers, yeah. Very good answers in there, everyone. You've pretty much covered my whole list. Which is fantastic. Other artists, marketing for promoting albums, agencies. Exactly. Great answers, everyone. I'm going to show you some of the ones that we came up with. So our suggestions, you've covered them. So agents or management, right? Other musicians, if you're writing songs together, you're performing together. Social media managers, so people look after your social media pages, producers, distributors, brand, etc. That said, often a lot of this will be done by your label. Obviously, many musicians now, increasingly with the internet, are independent, and some even have their own labels like Ed Sheeran or management companies like Jay-Z. But if you have any of these relationships, there might be situations that come up for an artist where they might decide they have to speak to a lawyer. As we mentioned earlier, you'll have different lawyers with different areas of expertise. So you'll maybe have different lawyers working with artists on different types of deals or other legal problems that might come up. So, and as I mentioned in the introduction, lawyers often help with three things, right? So make deals happen, solve problems, or make sure problems don't come up in the first place. And just to kind of talk you through that in a little bit more detail. Tom, do you want to start with transactional lawyers?
Yeah, brilliant. So let's take a little look at transactional work. And this essentially means making deals happen. So it could be as simple as buying, selling, merging, investing. Some examples could include buying a company raising money for a project, and in our music example, it could be a music label agreeing a contract with a musician. When comparing the different types of lawyers, the transactional lawyers, as I said, are the ones that make things happen. They negotiate deals, make sure everyone has what they need to be happy with the deal being made. So let's take a little bit of a look at our music example. When an artist signs with a label, both the artist and the label will have lawyers negotiating on their behalf, and this will be transactional lawyers. Often, a label will have their standard terms, but transactional lawyers on both sides will still have to negotiate key aspects. Who owns the music? How much is the artist being paid for their songs? How long is the contract? What does the artist have to deliver? Who does promo and marketing? And many, many more. Transactional lawyers, in this case, will have some guidance on the negotiation process. The musicians' union will offer some advice for artists. Labels will have standard contracts that are used as a starting point. And there will also be some industry standard clauses and structures that all contracts will have, some being a legal requirement. But let's zoom out, because contracts, and in our case, record deals, are about a lot more than just that. A record deal isn't just about making the music, it's also about ownership, money, control, and long-term rights. That's why lawyers are so important for this process. So another question for the Q&A. Which bit of the contract would you think is the most important for the artist and for the label? Nice, I'm seeing the answers come through now. Let's just wait for a few more. Nice. There's some great answers coming through. And what we're going to look at now is some real life examples. So several music artists have signed agreements where they don't own their music anymore. This could be something that they eventually regret, but it's a commercial decision to gain upfront cash. For example, if you're planning to retire, you can sell the copyright to your music with the help of transactional lawyers, which would give you a lump sum payment. The label then would get the rights, meaning they get paid every time the song is played on the radio or streamed. Sometimes contracts in the music space aren't set based on a certain length, but it could be a number of albums. So if artist X signed a deal, it wouldn't say be for 5 years, but it would be for 5 albums, which would make it, for example, easier for the label when there's delays in albums being published. However, being locked in based on the number of albums can cause issues in itself for labels. For example, what do you do as a label if an artist drops loads of albums in quick succession, but they're not very good? There was recently an artist who dropped 3 albums at the same time. Now, this could have been a creative decision, but it also could have been because of the contract. If their contract said they had to deliver X amount of albums for a label, then this could be a way to speed it up and get out the deal. Now, I'm not saying that the albums were dropped in this way. However, if that was the case, it might be hard to agree on whether the deal and the contract is void or not. The disagreement could then be based on if the albums are good enough to count or not. And that's where our second type of lawyers comes in. And I'm going to hand over to Eagle on that.
Thank you, Tom. To get Tom to do this webinar, I had to agree to make that example anonymized. So we had quite strong feelings on it, both of us. But in terms of any disagreements, you have disputes lawyers. So if transactional lawyers are the ones that make things happen, disputes lawyers are problem solvers. So they're the ones that get involved when something goes wrong or when someone disagrees about something. For example, using the artist that dropped 3 albums at the same time, there's probably going to be some sort of disagreement there, and that's where often a type of disputes lawyer will be involved. It doesn't always mean going to court, and often companies in particular will try and avoid going to court. But disputes lawyers are the ones that kind of step in when deals fall apart. Um, to use a different example, an artist releases a song that becomes very popular, and later another songwriter claims that they copied part of the music and they should be credited and paid. You mentioned, a couple of you mentioned about having that getting credit is an important part in the contract negotiations, and this happens a lot, right? Someone will release a song, it becomes a hit, and then someone will come along and say, "Well, the part of that song is mine." And what happens then is that the different parties, obviously, they disagree over ownership and originality. So lawyers and experts might get involved to compare the songs, review any contracts to figure out who actually owns the rights here, and then try to settle the issue or go to court. What's often at stake is money, right? So if you lose ownership of your song or your album, that's royalties from streams, it's sales, it's licensing, it's all of that. It's also the credit, right? Musicians, artists, they are creatives, and what they're putting out is often something they've worked very hard on. So getting that credit, again, as you mentioned, is really important. And then it's the reputation, right? So especially if you're accused of stealing something, you might want to defend yourself. So to explain it simply, it could be a dispute because something has gone wrong. So two people or two companies, two parties are arguing over who owns part of a piece of music. Um, so disputes lawyers in a disagreement between an artist and a label will often focus on the contract. So they can argue that a clause in the contract is unclear and is misinterpreted. So they should, for example, be paid more because the wording in the contract doesn't mean what the label says it means. That's one thing that they could argue about. Another thing is if you've signed a contract as an up and coming artist, you might not have a lot of bargaining power when you're dealing with a label. So you could say, well, hang on, this contract is unfair and it can't be enforced because of it. It's hard to argue that under English law, but it's possible to make that argument. And it could be that you as an artist think that actually the label hasn't done their job properly, right? They haven't helped you promote the song in the right way, which means that they haven't held up their end of the bargain. And therefore they've broken the contract. Just to kind of pass it back to you all for a minute, can you think of why, apart from kind of immediately wanting to be paid more, can you think of why an artist might want to make any of these arguments? I'll give you a couple more seconds, and then I'll talk you through some of the ones that we came up with. Um, it's probably a bit of a tricky one. There we go. That's a very good one from Lucy. So if they feel they've been mistreated or taken advantage of, great one here. To break away from the contract, yes. So maybe it's an opportunity uh, to try and get out of the contract, right? Maybe you as an artist, you've come through, you've been with a label for a few years. They've paid you well, but there are others out there who are promising you more money, but you can't work with them because you already have under contract. Maybe using this disagreement as a way to agree to walk away from it. Good point about maybe labels fail to uphold their contractual obligations, so they're not spent money in the right way. And good point from Layla as well around kind of feeling like the label isn't doing their part in promotion and having the song pushed out to an audience and kind of help build your audience in that way. Again, kind of feeling like you've kind of been let down a bit. It can be quite an emotive situation that you're in. There's a lot of emotions involved. So a lot of really good examples there. Some of the ones that we could think of. So obviously, someone's not being paid, or they want to be paid more by their current label. So they're basically going in and saying, "Look, this isn't good enough. We want to renegotiate." They feel something is unfair and they want to fix, or they want to get out of the contract, like you mentioned, right? So either because they want to go independent, or because they want to sign with a different label. And of course, lawyers for each side will interpret things differently. This is where lawyers might either have those negotiations or make arguments for clients in court. Obviously, in England and Wales, as I'm sure you're aware of, the ones making arguments in court are called barristers, by and large, and they're the ones that work in law firms are generally solicitors. Now, there are solicitor advocates who make arguments in court, and some law firms like us have people, lawyers who are barristers working for them. But by and large, I think we can make that distinction. One important thing to mention, though, is that disputes like these, they don't always come up in court, and instead they're settled out of court, right? You see that a lot in kind of the high-profile cases in the US, but it happens here as well, where there is a disagreement, and parties kind of threaten to go to court, but it doesn't come to it. I've already asked you all for a lot of answers already, so I'll tell you some of the reasons why cases don't always end up in court. So instead of going to court, you can find some sort of agreement. So that saves time, right? Going to court is expensive, and it takes a long time, especially if you're paying for really good lawyers and everything like that. It takes it takes a lot of money to be able to do it. Not everyone can, and it can often take a long time to go through the justice system. So being tied up in a dispute when you want to write and release music isn't very good for an artist. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of energy, and also time spent in court is time not spent performing at festivals, for example. Going to court can also be a gamble. So even if you think you're likely to win, you can't guarantee it, right? Your lawyer or team of lawyers will always do their best for you. That's their job, but it's ultimately down to the court to decide the outcome. So you can't guarantee that you will be able to win. It can also have an impact on your branding or image if you're seen to taking people to court a lot. So sometimes taking someone to court can make others more hesitant to work with you in the future if they think if you're likely to take them to court as well, right? So often threatening to go to court can be a negotiation tactic, rather than something that a lot of people want to do. Going to court and having disputes with others is therefore something that clients would normally like to avoid. Obviously, there are situations where you can't, either because you can't come up with some sort of settlement agreement for whichever reason, or it could be a very emotive, right? It can be a lot of feelings involved, and if you feel like you've been wronged by the other party, you might just want that day in court. That happens not just for private individuals and artists. It can happen for companies as well, where they feel like they've been mistreated so badly that they want to be able to settle this in court, either because of those emotions or because they want to show to other companies as well that they're not going to just let others do what they want, and they can defend themselves as well. We do, however, have this third box on the right hand side next to disputes lawyers. Tom, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, brilliant. Let's talk a little bit about advisory lawyers. And the name of the game with advisory lawyers is to try advise on risks and explain certain things to clients so that disputes don't end up happening, so they can be ironed out. They will often be experts in particular fields and give clients insights into this. So, for example, an advisory lawyer could make clients aware of what kind of tax they need to pay, how much it's going to cost, and by when they need to pay. It can also be about explaining the risks attached to a particular deal. So, for example, how certain contract nuances affect the deal, essentially. So, if disputes lawyers are the heroes fixing things after it's gone wrong, the advisory lawyers are the ones that avoid that problem in the first place, essentially. So let's use our music example. Advisory lawyers can explain the risks to their client. So, for example, according to this contract, who owns the music? Who decided whether a song could be used for a certain ad? What can the artist do if the ad doesn't align with their values? More fundamentally, an advisory lawyer can tell an artist what their core rights are, and can also do the same for the label. So I just want to ask a little questions of the chat. Can you think of why a label would need to know what rights an artist has during negotiations, and why they wouldn't just want to make the deal as good as possible for themselves? We've come up with a couple of reasons, but I'm hoping that we get some more great answers in the chat. Lovely, loads of answers coming through. I'm seeing some really good ones. So I'm just going to talk you through what me and Eagle came up with. I've seen that some of you have come up with the same answers, which is great to see. Some of the reasons we came up with are reputational risk. If a label is known to treat their artist badly, other artists might be reluctant to work with them. I mean, what artist is going to want to work with a label that doesn't respect their rights as an artist? The risk of legal challenge later. The musician can sue if their rights haven't been upheld. And also, just in general, lawyers need to take the opposing side's rights into account. So those are some of the answers we came up with. So let's talk about how advisory lawyers, how they interact with the other types. We've already talked about how they sort of stop disputes before they happen, but they can also work very closely with transactional lawyers on contract negotiations, as they can explain certain elements of the contract to the client. As I briefly mentioned, good advisory lawyers are often invisible because if their job is done properly, the problem never happens in the first place. However, advisory lawyers can't take all risks out of a deal. Instead, at times, it might be about simply making clients aware of the risk and letting them decide whether those risks are worth it. To show this in practice, we have some extreme examples that Eagle's going to go through.
Sure. Thank you, Tom.
No worries.
So we've set it out, so you have different parts of the contract, right? So who owns the music, what the royalties like, what's the length, who's got creative control, promotion exit rights and everything like that. So you can see that there are some kind of terms in here or positions that clearly favor the artist, and then some that clearly kind of are more label centric. So uh, obviously, both artists and labels will be getting legal advice, and sometimes they end up with deals they later don't like later down the line, right? So if you're an aspiring artist, some of you have actually mentioned some of this already. But can you think of any reason why you might take a deal that isn't entirely to your advantage? For example, you sign a deal with a label where the label owns that music forever. Good one here from Charlotte. So label has connections with the industry, right? Malik, an artist starting out might just want to take the first step in professional music. Again, very good point. Um, and very good one from Lucy as well. So if the label has a strong reputation for helping an artist achieve success, um, and they have kind of the ability to distribute your music and your name out, as Laurie says as well, it might be more beneficial. So that obviously initially can look like a very bad deal for an artist and like a good deal for the label, right? Because they get everything they want here. They they will get the streaming rights for that music forever, and they control it all. The problem with that is, as we've kind of touched upon, that artists might decide that that's unfair and it's not, it doesn't protect their rights. So you might even as a label decide that you want to go for something a bit more balanced. So, the rights return to the artist after a set time, or you might decide that on the contract length, you don't want to lock someone in for a very long time. That could be because you don't want to kind of have to work with a musician who isn't as successful as they could be. But it could also be because you want to be seen as kind of fair and balanced as well. And it's a way to kind of keep that relationship positive, right? Sometimes as well, what can happen is artists don't get legal advice, or what they got wasn't very good, or there were unintentional consequences that you couldn't have foreseen at the time, right? So, for example, you might sign up to a contract, and the royalties you think are great, like they're fantastic. You're managing to earn a living off your music, which see a lot of musicians can't. You now can, so you sign, and then later down the line, you realize that yes, you might be making some money, but actually you're now a huge star, and you should be getting more, right? And obviously there's negotiating power in there as well. A big name will be able to negotiate better deals for themselves. So, in other words, if a label has offered a long deal to an up-and-coming artist, they run the risk of committing to an artist that won't make it big, or they tie down a superstar to a deal that won't pay the artist as much as they want, and therefore making the label more money in the short term, but maybe risking that relationship in the longer term as well. So being more lenient with their terms can help increase goodwill, build relationships, and hopefully mean the artist would sign new terms after the current deal ends as well. And that means that two artists assign a contract that might look very similar. One can earn millions more just because of small differences in the terms, because of their negotiating power, or because of the legal advice that they got, or simply because the label is more lenient. Tom?
Yeah, no worries. Let's go over what we've covered today, just a little summary. So what I want you to take away is that city law firms make deals happen through their transactional lawyers. They help their clients during disagreements with their disputes lawyers, and they reduce risk and explain complex issues through advisory lawyers. Now, law firms can either offer some or all three of these services, and often they will only offer these services to certain types of businesses. So, for example, some law firms might focus on the entertainment industry, which means that they will only work with clients from this industry. To help you think of why some law firms will focus on working for a particular type of client, what do you think? What would you look for in a law firm? And we'll just try to get another couple of answers in, and then we've got a couple of reasons we came up with. Yeah, brilliant point. Strong reputation. Yep, yep, good experience. Another great point. Reliable. Yep. Yeah, 100%. You definitely hope that your city law firm knows your needs as a client. Those are some brilliant answers, and I'm really happy with those. So let's talk about some of the ones that me and Eagle came up with. So one of the things we focused on was expertise. Obviously, if a firm has expertise in a certain area that you need advice on, then they're going to be more familiar with the issues, and they're going to be able to deliver the best possible service, right? Another thing we focused on was network. If they know, if a firm knows people in the industry and it knows potential clients know about them, then that's a good thing. Having a strong reputation is something that attracts clients. Yeah, those are pretty much the reasons we came up with. So now I just want to mention that your next webinar will cover the different types of city law firms in more detail. But hopefully we've given you something to start thinking about in regards to city law. And now I think we'll open it up to questions, right, Eagle?
Yes, absolutely. Just before we do that, I just want to give a shout out. Malik, you said about price, and that's something you'd look for in a law firm. I just want to say, I think that's important. I've been doing a lot of interviews at the moment with university grads who are looking for training contracts, and that the cost element is something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to those questions. So very well done for doing that and thinking about it. And I think it shows that you're all kind of starting to build that commercial awareness. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, definitely some great answers today.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Well, if I may just jump in, sorry, and not so much a question, but more an observation. First of all, I thought your presentation, Tom and Eagle, was really strong, and I love the fact that you brought us something relatable, but also something exciting. I think quite often people think city law is not really necessarily exciting and cutting edge and something that you'd want to talk about with your friends, but there is a fair tranche of work that is. So I thought that was really extraordinary. I can't believe, Tom, that you're a solicitor apprentice and not more senior than that. And just Tom is, I think, an example of how competitive our recruitment process is. We have several hundred applying for any one of our roles, and to get the offer, you have to really outperform all of the others. So I think it's an extraordinary privilege for us all to see the level of competence that gets you the job. Having said that, I've been really impressed by the engagement on this call, by the insights and the answers that you're giving. As you were watching it, I was thinking, is this actually a bunch of qualified lawyers that we're on here? But I don't think you are yet. So I would I would just note that as someone who, who's been involved in and around recruitment for the last 20, 30 years, I'm very, very confident about your competence level and how well you will do. So certainly all of you that were answering, I would very much encourage you to think this is a career you should achieve, and I would want you to continue down the finding out and application and recruitment type process, because I think your real quality. And then Agil, I just want to thank you as well for taking this on. It's something you could not have done. So I'm really grateful, and I think it's an example of how collaborative law firms are. We're typically very competitive, but one of the things that we've proven with City Century is that there's a real will in the city to open up the profession, widen access to the profession, and it's been joyful to see how people are doing that and just jumping in and giving what I think is a really useful session for you all. So I hope that you agree. But those are my thoughts. So no questions as such, but just immense gratitude. I'm really proud of what you've done today, all of you.
Brilliant. I echo all of that, Patrick. We've just got a couple of questions here in the chat. So Tom, there's one there for you. Can you talk us through your journey? So I think from school leaver to apprenticeship and where you are today.
Yeah, no worries. I would be more than happy to. So my journey is fairly simple. So I finished my A levels last year at a state school where I grew up, and I attended a lot of these sorts of events to help build up knowledge. So I think this is definitely something worthwhile. And as Patrick said, with the quality of answers in the chat, I have no doubt that all of you will be in a similar position very soon. And then I applied to Watson, Farley and Williams, went through the process, the initial application, online interview, assessment centre, final partner interview, and now I've been here for, I want to say 8 months, Eagle. So
yeah, it has been, hasn't it?
Yeah, time
I
flies.
think Patrick is counting. Maybe he'll tell us we're wrong.
There's another question there in the chat for you, Tom, around. So you were one of the first solicitor apprentices to join Watson, Farley and Williams. And
Yep.
The question, thank you, Lucy, for the question. How have you found the experience, as it's still a relatively new path for firms to learn? And so it's a kind of two-way learning process, I suppose, is the question. So you might want to jump in on this one as well, Eagle. In terms of how Watson, Farley, Williams are learning, but how have you found it being one of the newbies, Tom?
Yeah, brilliant. I'll get this one kicked off. Quite simply, I've absolutely loved every minute of it. I just think Watson, Farley and Williams as a firm, absolutely brilliant in terms of all the different things we offer, our specific sector knowledge, and the likes of, but also just everyone at this firm has truly made me feel welcome. And early careers have organised a brilliant rotation system, which has allowed me to truly get the best out of my experience so far. But I'm sure I can pass over to Eagle to talk a little bit more about that.
Brilliant.
It's very easy to run a good program when you have such talented apprentices coming through. I mean, Tom and Apana as our first two. I mean, Tom, when we started putting this presentation together, sent me a different presentation he'd been putting together, which was running training for our qualified lawyers. And he's, not even finished his first year yet. So I think as a firm, we had a lot of support internally to run it. But the number of partners that have come to me and gone, wow, is amazing. We're upping our intake. We're taking 3 in September, and I wouldn't be surprised if we keep increasing it, because it's just amazing to see. And Tom has done a fantastic job helping us kind of show internally that the massive talent that's out there. And based on the questions we're getting, I think we'll get some more as well.
Brilliant. And then just to echo that, Eagle, that's certainly my experience from my previous firm, introducing apprenticeships there, and the way in which the apprentices immersed themselves within the firm from day one, and very much became part of the fabric of the firm. from day one and made a really positive contribution is certainly my sort of experience. And so, any hesitations that anyone within a firm would have are soon sort of pushed to one side once they're in and they're up and running and they're making a valued contribution to the teams across the firm. There's a couple of specific ones there, Tom, in the chat.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
A-levels did you take, and what do you think made your application stand out?
Right. So in regard to what A levels I took, I actually did history, business, and photography. A nice mix, I think. I think history and business were particularly useful. Business for building up that commercial awareness a little bit. And history is just that sort of heavy writing subjects are always going to be helpful for a career like this. And I think in regard to what made my application stand out, I always defer to Eagle to talk about this one, as he understands the application process a little bit more, the ins and outs, and what makes an application great.
Sure. I think what Tom did really well was, yes, he'd done his research on the firm, but he was the one thing that kind of stood out to us was the answer we asked in the application form is, why do you want to do an apprenticeship? It sounds very basic, but you're signing up for 6 years. It's a big commitment. And the way that Tom just kind of knocked that answer out of the park made us feel confident that he knew what he was signing up to. He'd done the research. He knew that it suited his skill set, and he knew what would be expected of him as well. And I think, obviously, we're not recruiting apprentices because we think you'll be the finished article right now, but we're looking for someone who has that commitment and that enthusiasm. And that's what Tom showed. And if you can do that in your application form and throughout the recruitment process, that's what law firms will that's what will make them sit up and take notice of you.
Brilliant. There's one in here about when you would decide where to specialise within city law, and I think I can sort of kick off on that one and say one of the beauties of the apprenticeship programme is that it's a 6-year programme, and so over the course of that 6 years you get to spend time in lots of different teams across the firm. And so you get exposure to a lot more different types of law and different practice areas and different sectors than you might otherwise get if you were joining as a graduate trainee. And certainly, my advice there to everyone is to keep an open mind. As I said at the start of today's webinar, I've been a real estate lawyer for the last 28 years. But when I joined my firm as a trainee, I never thought that I had any interest in real estate law. So it's really about keeping an open mind. And I think the apprenticeship programme allows you the opportunity to have lots of different experiences. And at the end of that 6-year programme, decide where you want to focus for your career going forward.
Yeah, Paul, I just want to piggyback off that actually and sort of blow Watson, Farley and Williams' horn a little bit. During our trainee rotations, we actually have 6 rotations of 4 months rather than the typical 4 rotations of 6 months. So as well as the other years of the apprenticeship scheme, there's also just even more of an opportunity to explore all the different areas of the firm. So I think by the time I get to specialise, I think I will have basically tried everything.
Well, and Tom, if I may just jump in there,
yeah.
I think there's a real advantage at the moment because the provision of legal services is changing so fundamentally in a way that I've never seen before, so seismically, almost on a daily basis. I sort of think getting in early is a good idea rather than taking 4 or 5 years out to go to a traditional university and then to law school, and you don't know what you're going to be joining in 5 years. So, if you get a solicitor apprenticeship offered, I definitely want you to think really carefully about it, because I just think getting in right now is a really good idea, because if you're riding the crest of that transformation, you'll be in a very, very strong position in 5 or 6 years' time when you qualify, because you'll have grown and evolved with the organisation.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant point.
Brilliant. Patrick, do you want to take the one, is virtual work experience valuable? I know you might want to say something about the City Centre work experience.
Yeah, I would. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. So previously, back in the day, work experience was used for 2 or 3 main purposes. Number one was, is this right for you? And so you being able to make a decision by, suck it and see type of thing. It was also a demonstration of someone's commitment, that they were interested, and it was also an opportunity to see if that person was right for the firm. Now, back in my day and up to 10 or 15 years ago, it's been predominantly middle class kids that have made it into the profession for one reason or another, and you could test commitment because they could either be on holiday rather than coming into work experience, and so you could test commitment that way. But I don't think that's the case anymore. But what we know is the application numbers are going up, and the recruitment numbers are not going up in the same proportion. So what that means is that work experience is more difficult to acquire, and I think also law firms have become a lot more sophisticated about how they assess you, and it's not just by watching you for 2 or 3 months. So for those of you who are thinking about solicitor apprenticeship, so entry into the profession at 18, I would say legal work experience is not at all expected, and I would say is for most people unachievable. But there are options. Most of the law firms will offer virtual work experience of somewhere between 2 hours and several days. On our website, citycentury.co.uk, we have 2 hours of free work experience, which we'd really recommend that you do, because that will demonstrate commitment. It will also, you'll get a fair idea of whether this is for you or not. But what is important is you being able to demonstrate the skills for which a firm is recruiting. And one of the ways that you can do that is by evidencing you displaying some of those skills in different aspects of your life, including at work. But if you've worked in a cafe, if you've worked in client services, if you've worked in a factory, if you've done a paper round, any of that can be really helpful. If you've worked on any group projects in your school, if you've done anything like a Duke of Edinburgh, if you volunteered over here in a sheltered accommodation place, all of that will demonstrate skills that firms are looking for. So you do not have to come in and pretend to be a lawyer for 2 weeks in a firm in London to be recruited. And in fact, I would say, most law firms are looking much more widely than that. So I hope that helps. If you look on our LinkedIn page, we have a series called 100 miles per hour, and we have another series called 100% Mine, a little video series, and they both explain the recruitment process and also how you can demonstrate the transferable skills that firms are looking for. So I think that's a really good start for you. Igil, you're recruiting. Why don't you answer that one?
Yeah, we have our virtual work experience program, and I think it can be a good way to test out what a law firm does. Ours is on shipping finance because that's kind of where we started out. What I always say is it's 3 hours. You get it on your application, you get a diploma, you can put it on your LinkedIn if you have it. Best case scenario, it allows you to come into an interview with one of our shipping partners and talk about why you like it. Worst case scenario, it means you can come in and tell our partners why you want to focus on a different area of the firm, right? Either way, it's experience. It's a way to help you with that conversation around why you want to do certain things. So 100%, I know virtual work experience is a lot easier to get now, but it still helps.
And then if I could take, there are a couple of other questions. One of them says, what happens if you get laid off during your solicitor apprenticeship? You'll end up without a job and without a degree. So here's what I would say. We don't hear of anybody being laid off. I think something would have to happen fairly drastically with the person's performance, and it would usually be the person saying, actually, this isn't for me. We do not hear of firms terminating solicitor apprenticeships, at least not firms in the City Centre crew. We are aware that has happened with some in-house people, and it's happened with some smaller firms outside of London. But the sorts of firms that we are dealing with, they're right at the top of the game. They are the most reputable law firms, and it is not in their interest to gain a reputation for laying people off, nor do they want to. What we know, because the recruitment process is so competitive, as I said, and I am talking across over 50 firms, is that if anything, law firms with solicitor apprentices, as Igil has said, want more. They're saying they're actually so good. We want more. So I think you should be more worried about the fact that you'll have so much work and you'll be spoiled for choice about what you'll do. It's just not going to happen, and I can give you that as a reassurance. So I hope that's been helpful.
Well, so just on that question, so just to clarify, at the end of your 6-year apprenticeship, you do have a university degree. So during the course of the apprenticeship, you're studying part-time for an LLB in law. So you do have a degree at the end of the apprenticeship. And in terms of it, going to the other point as well, in terms of qualification at the end of the apprenticeship, when you're a qualified solicitor, I think the point that I would make there is that you've been immersed in a law firm for 6 years. You've had a great opportunity there to really prove your worth. And I think, you have confidence and belief in your own ability, and you've got a secure future with that firm.
Agree. And Paul, the other financial benefit is that you're not incurring university debt and you're being paid to live, and you're being paid quite well actually in the city. So you won't come out with £100,000 worth of studying related debt, which is a pretty cool thing to do. The other thing to say is, when you qualify, if you qualify with a city century firm, you will be paid a good sum of money. You will probably never have to worry about money ever again. That's just not going to be an issue for you. So I hope that helps. I think there was one more question that I saw, Paul.
Brilliant. There was one about whether it's easier, better to get an offer for a solicitor apprenticeship or go off to uni. And I think, my view on that is, it's something that you really need to give some thought to. And I don't think there's one sort of one size fits all approach. And I think it's thinking about how best you learn. And so some people will learn better by practicing what they're learning on the job, which is one of the great things about the solicitor apprenticeship. Others will prefer to go off and study and get all of the study element done before they immerse themselves into practice. And so, I think, yes, whilst we as City Century are promoting and protecting the apprenticeship route into the profession, it is very much a sort of personal choice there. And one final question there, I'm conscious of time. A lot of students are told to use LinkedIn, but it's not always clear what good use of it looks like. I'm 16 and just finished GCSEs. So where do you recommend I start building a presence? Patrick, you are one of the LinkedIn gurus. Do you want to answer that one? And then maybe Tom and Eagle, you might have some thoughts on that as well,
Yeah.
how people can raise their profile on the LinkedIn platform.
So here's my thought. It's very unlikely that you're going to be recruited because you've got a great LinkedIn profile. That's not what we're looking for at this level. Where I think LinkedIn is really helpful is it's a really good research, information gathering, network building type tool for you. So I would put up a fairly basic profile, and you can Google to find out what a good profile looks like, and you might not want to put your picture on there. That's fine. We know in some communities that's not a done thing. And then I would literally type in the name of the job that you're looking for and find people that have that job and start to follow them. Definitely follow City Century, follow things like Legal Cheek, to some degree, Roll on Friday, Lawyer to Be, etc., Connect to Law, Little Law. And you just need to Google, get on some of the Reddit accounts, and they will show you which people to follow. But I think that's your main thing. I call that lurk and learn, which is that you're just sort of on the side of things. But we're not expecting you to write big theses. We're not expecting you to develop loads of business. We're not expecting you to have brought loads of clients in or to be, the big I am. It's more about just being on there. It looks a bit odd if you're not on there at all, and it definitely looks odd if you've never heard of it and you're not doing anything with it, because that feels like you're not researching properly. So that's what I would say in relation to that. Tom, you might be a LinkedIn superstar. I don't know.
No, certainly not. I couldn't agree more with what you said. I think using it as a researching tool is just brilliant. Definitely follow the account suggested by Patrick. some great stuff on there that can really support your applications. So that's what I'd say.
I think also follow the accounts of Watson, Farley, and Williams and the
Certainly.
firms who have on your target list, because the firms will put out lots of content on there about deals they've worked on. They'll put out podcasts that dig a bit deeper into some of the sectors that they're involved with. So it's a minefield of kind of useful resources.
Great.
Brilliant. I think all that leaves me to do is to say a massive thank you to Egil and Tom for joining us and presenting such a fantastic overview of, what do city lawyers do. I love the interplay between the different types of lawyers and how they all fit together within a law firm, from transactional lawyers to disputes lawyers and advisory lawyers, who all have a role to play in ensuring the success of their clients. And thank you all for joining. And I think, just in terms of some admin, the next episode goes live on Monday of next week at 5 p.m. usual time, same link. So we look forward to you joining us again then.
Thank you. Egil and Tom, if you could just hang on just for a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Yep, no worries.
Well done, everyone.